Okay. Hi guys. Okay. Uh for today's discussion, it's gonna be about Western art. Okay, Western art and Asian art. Alongside with that, the different art movements in different time periods. Okay. So let's look into what Western art is all about. Okay. Now, when we say Western arts, you're actually referring to the literary, performing, and visual arts of Europe, okay, and the different regions of Europe that share a European cultural tradition, including the United States and Canada. Okay, now for Western art, well, unlike the ancient Egyptian art, which based on paganism beliefs and rituals, the earliest known forms of art in Western countries circulated within religious artifacts. Okay, social and historical events in the 12th century up to the 18th century, arts also depended not only on architecture but also on visual arts. The main aim of the artists was to use images to convey spiritual messages. Now, when it comes to the importance of Western art, it tells a story about a people, time, and culture. And as humans, we tend to use metaphors and symbols to represent important messages, items, and events. Okay, Western art is no different, as there are many unique and rich stories hidden beneath the art form's history. Okay, now, for Western art influence, it actually influences society by changing opinions, instilling values, and translating experiences across space and time. Art, in this sense, is communication, and it also allows people from different cultures and different times to communicate with each other, okay, via images, sounds, and stories. Art is often a vehicle for social change. Okay. Now, uh, by history of Western painting from its beginnings in prehistoric times to the present, you have here painting the execution of forms and shapes on a surface by means of a pigment, okay, which has been continuously practiced by humans for some 20,000 rather years ago, okay, and together with other activities that may have been ritualistic in origin but have come to be designated as artistic. That's why Western painting or painting was one of the earliest ways in which man sought to express his own personality and his emerging understanding of an existence beyond the material world. Now, the focal theme of Western painting is in general distinguished by its concentration on the representation of the human figure, whether in the heroic context of antiquity or the religious context of the early Christian and medieval world. The Renaissance, for example, extended this tradition through a close examination. Okay, close examination of the natural world and an investigation of balance, harmony, and perspective in the visible world. Okay, also linking painting to the developing sciences of anatomy and optics. Okay, so let's look into the different movements of Western art, approximately starting from 4 AD to present. Okay, so you have here medieval, Renaissance, Baroque, Rococo, Neoclassicism, Romanticism, and Impressionism. They also have Post Impressionism, Expressionism, Cubism, Futurism, Art Deco, Abstract Expressionism, and Contemporary art. Okay, so number one of which is the medieval. Okay, medieval Western art. Now, from around 4 CE to 1300, this era is a broad category that includes many artistic styles and periods, from early Christian and Byzantine, Anglo-Saxon and Viking, Carolingian, Ottonian, Romanesque, and Gothic. During the medieval period, the various secular arts were unified by the Christian Church and the sacred arts associated with it. Okay, so for medieval art, the characteristics include iconography, Christian or religious subject matter, You also have elaborate patterns and decoration, bright colors, as what you can see in the sample of medieval art before you, the use of precious metals, gems, and other luxurious materials, stylized figures, as well as social status. Okay, so here you have the Annunciation of Saint Margaret and Saint Ansanus, okay, a Gothic, Simone Martini, and Lipimemi in 1333. For the Renaissance, okay, this is embodied in painting, sculpture, architecture, music, and literature, produced during the 14th, 15th, and 16th century. Okay, now Europe was under the combined influences of an increased awareness of nature, a revival of classical learning, and more individualistic view of man. Scholars no longer believe that the Renaissance marked an abrupt break with medieval values, as is suggested by the French word Renaissance, which literally means rebirth. Okay, so from the medieval period, which is usually deemed to be understood as the Dark Ages, the Renaissance is the illuminating figure from that period. Okay, so everything has changed and flourished in the Renaissance period, and a lot of what do you call this, social revolutionary changes, not just in literature, in arts, in science. You also have new discoveries. Okay, alongside with that is technology. For the characteristics of Renaissance, it has a reverent revival of classical Greek or Roman art forms and styles, a faith in the nobility of man, which is also referred to as uh, humanism. Okay, now humanism is believed to be a cultural movement during the Renaissance period, which turned away from medieval scholasticism, and it also revived the interest in ancient Greek and Roman thought. You could also observe under the Renaissance era on humanism, a system of thought criticized as being centered on the notion of, say, the rational, autonomous, self, and ignoring the unintegrated and conditioned nature of the individual. That's why humanism uh, during the Renaissance period is also a philosophy, okay, a philosophy of humanity, okay, that values human dignity, reason, and ethics over supernatural beliefs and dogmas. Okay, another characteristic under the Renaissance was the mastery of illusionistic painting techniques. Okay, now, it also maximizes the depth in a picture, including linear perspective, foreshortening, and later the quadrature and the naturalistic realism of its faces. Okay, so here you have the Venus and Adonis. This is a painting by the Italian mannerist Paolo Veronese in 1582. For the Baroque period or the Baroque movement, this is a style with exaggerated motion and clear detail, used to produce drama, exuberance, and grandeur in sculpture, painting, architecture, literature, dance, and music. Okay, for Baroque iconography, this was direct, obvious, and dramatic, intending to appeal above all senses, okay, and the emotions. Now, Baroque started as a response of the Catholic Church to the many criticisms that arose during the Protestant reform in the 16th century. Okay. Now, the Baroque art of or style of painting and culture is believed to have originated in Italy in the mid 1500s. So here it is characterized as more expressive, theatrical in style than the Renaissance style that it preceded. Okay. Now, for the characteristics, okay, of Baroque painting. This is a painting associated with Baroque cultural movement. Yes, and as I mentioned earlier, it began in Italy. Baroque painting is also characterized with grandeur, sensuous richness, great drama, rich, deep color, and intense light, as well as dark shadows. Okay, so here you have an example of a Baroque sculpture, the Rape of Proserpina. Okay, this is a large Baroque marble group sculpture by an Italian artist, Gian Lorenzo Bernini. Okay, executed between 1621 and 1622. So Bernini here was only 23 years old at its completion. For the Rococo movement, this was an artistic period that emerged in France and spread throughout the world. The word is a derivative of the French term rocaille, which means rock and shell garden ornamentation. Rococo was primarily influenced by the Venetian school's use of color, erotic subjects, and Arcadian landscapes. The father of Rococo painting was Jean Antoine Watteau. He invented the new genre called Fetes Galantes, which were scenes of courtship parties. Okay. Now, the characteristics under Rococo painting, you have here the soft colors, the curvy lines, okay, that depicts scenes of love, nature, amorous encounters, light-hearted entertainment, and most especially youth. Okay, so in this example here under the Rococo movement, you have Apollo and Daphne, a painting done by Giovanni Battista Tiepolo in 1744. On neoclassicism, this was a Western cultural movement in the decorative and visual arts, literature, theater, music, and architecture that drew inspiration from the art and culture of classical antiquity. Neoclassicism is a revival of many styles inspired directly from the classical period, which coincided and reflected the developments in philosophy and other areas of age of enlightenment, and was initially a reaction against the excesses of the preceding Rococo style. So some of the characteristics under neoclassicism includes concentration in Greek and Roman mythology and history for subjects. You also have another characteristic like heroic male nude, somewhat dramatic lighting, and a rather clean style with hard edges and bright primary colors in painting. Okay, and you also have a smooth finish, a highly polished marble in sculpture. Okay, so here you have an example of a neoclassicism sculpture entitled Pauline Bonaparte as Venus Victrix. This is a semi-nude life-size reclining neoclassical portrait sculpture by the Italian sculptor Antonio Canova in 1808. For Romanticism, okay, Romanticism, this was an artistic, literary, musical, visual, and intellectual movement that originated in Europe towards the end of the 18th century. And in most areas, it was at its peak in the approximate period from 1800 to 1850. Romanticism as an umbrella term under which many stylistic themes and values meet and interact, for example, the Gothic, the sublime, the sentimental, love of nature, and romance narrative. Okay, so for Romanticism, it also refers to the state of quality or being romantic. Okay, that's why for some examples that would include the Romantic movement, it affected most aspects of intellectual life, and Romanticism and science had a powerful connection, especially during the 1800 to 1840. Okay, also influenced by Romanticism is, or rather, the history writings, which were very strongly and many would say harmfully influenced by uh, Romanticism. Okay, so another name for Romanticism, sometimes it is also referred to as the Romantic era, or say romantic and romance. Okay, now for the characteristics of Romanticism, It has more emphasis on emotion and individualism, as well as glorification of all the past and nature, preferring the medieval rather than the classical. It also promoted the individual imagination as a critical authority, allowed of freedom from classical notions of form in art. Here you have a romantic painting entitled The Bark of Dante, also Dante and Virgil in Hell by Eugene Delacroix in 1822. This work embarked the shift in the character of the narrative painting from neoclassicism towards romanticism. Okay? Now, on Impressionism, this is a 19th century art movement. Okay, so Impressionism was a revolutionary art movement that emerged in France in the late 19th century, challenging the traditional rules of painting. Okay, now the Impressionist painters used layers of colors, leaving gaps in the top layers to reveal the colors underneath. The technique is achieved through hatching, cross hatching, stipping, stippling, dry brushing, and graffito, okay, which means scratching into the paint. Impressionism was a radical art movement. The artists rebelled against classical subject matter and embraced modernity, desiring to create works that reflect the world in which they live. Okay. Now, of course, under Impressionism, it also portrays a literary or artistic style that seeks to capture a feeling of experience, okay, rather than to achieve accurate depiction. Now, for the characteristics under Impressionism, uh, it strongly emphasized the effects of light in their paintings. They would use short, thick strokes of paint to capture the essence of the object rather than object's details. Okay. Quickly applied brush strokes would give the painterly illusion of movement and spontaneity. Now, this example of Impressionism is a bar at the Folie Bergère. This is a painting by Edouard Monet, okay, considered to be his last major work, painted in 1882. It depicts a scene in the Folie Bergère nightclub in Paris. Now, for guessing what this painting is and what is the title, okay, the artist has a rather sad life, or rather an unsuccessful career in painting during that time that he was still living. Okay, because he never sold any artwork. But after his death, all of his paintings became a masterpiece and was known, or rather became known to the world over. Okay, so this was the painting done by Vincent van Gogh entitled Starry Starry Night, and he painted this in 1889. Okay, this was a view from the window before sunrise. Okay, now his painting, according to critics, shows an illusion wherein there is movement in the painting. Okay. Now, for post-impressionism, this is characterized by a subjective approach to painting, as artists opted to evoke emotion rather than realism in their work. Okay. The post-impressionists rejected the impressionism's concern with the spontaneous and naturalistic rendering of light and color. Instead, they favored an emphasis on more symbolic content, formal order and structure, as well as artificiality in strokes. So, for the characteristics under post Impressionism, both extended Impressionism while rejecting its limitations. Okay. The artist continued using vivid colors, a thick application of paint, and real life subject matter, but were more inclined to emphasize geometric forms, distort forms for an expressive effect, and use unnatural and seemingly random colors. Okay, so this is another example during the post Impressionist era, A Vision After the Sermon. This is an oil painting made by French artist Paul Gauguin. okay, in 1888. It depicts a scene from the Bible in which Jacob wrestles with, or rather, wrestles an angel. Now, on Expressionism, which started in 1905 CE to 1930 CE, Expressionism emerged as a reaction to the European spiritual and social cries of the early 20th century. Okay. Now, instead of the real world, expressionists convey their personal emotions in their works. They also created masterpieces composed of distorted figures, shocking colors, and powerful lines. Okay. The characteristics under expressionism, okay, are tied to convey emotion and meaning rather than reality. Each artist had their own unique way of expressing emotions in their art. And in order to do that, the subjects are often distorted or exaggerated. Okay? So here you have an expressionist painting, A Dance Around the Golden Calf by Emile Nolde in 1910. Okay? So the painting here is distorted because what is important as to be viewed by the spectator is the emotions that is drawn by the painting, okay, or emotions that are shown by the painting. Okay. On Cubism, this started in 1907 to 1914. Cubism is an artistic movement created by Pablo Picasso and George Braque, which employs geometric shapes in depictions of human and other forms. Now, over time, the geometric touches grew so intense that they sometimes overtook the represented forms, creating a more pure level of seemingly visual abstraction. Okay. Now, the characteristics include subjects in new ways in an effort to depict three dimensions on a flat canvas. Okay. They would break up the subject into many different shapes, then repaint it from different angles. Okay, so Cubism paved the way for many different modern art movements of art in the 20th century. Okay. So some say Cubism is a radical vision of reality. Okay. It also challenged the conventional representation of reality in the early 20th century. Okay. Uh, it is also considered as an avant-garde art movement that revolutionized European painting and sculpture and inspired related artistic movements, including music, literature, and architecture. Okay. So in Cubism, the subject is broken up into different pieces and then reassembled in an abstract form. So instead of depicting objects from a single perspective, the artist depicts the subject from multiple perspectives, okay, to represent the subject in a greater context. Now, Cubism is also considered as a kind of realism, with a conceptual approach to realism in art which aims to depict the world as it is and not as it seems. Okay? And that was the whole idea for Cubism. Now, here you have an example work, okay, on Cubism as an art movement. You have the violin and the candlestick in 1910 made by George Braque. This work embodies the dynamic and energetic qualities of analytic Cubism. Okay, hence a revolutionary artistic style. Okay, for Futurism, this started in 1910 up to 1930. Okay. This is an artistic movement centered in Italy that emphasized the dynamism, speed, energy, and power of the machine. Okay, and including with that is the vitality, change, and restlessness of modern life. Okay, so Futurism was launched by the Italian poet Filippo Tommaso Marinetti in 1909. On February 20, he published his manifesto on futurism, okay, and it was published in the front page of the Paris newspaper Le Figaro. Okay. Now let's look into okay, futurism as an artistic and social movement. Okay, so for futurism, in addition, it is more concerned with events and trends of the future or with the anticipated future that we expect. Okay, this began in Italy in 1909, as mentioned earlier, that violently rejected traditional forms. Okay, so as to celebrate and incorporate art, okay, the energy and dynamism of modern technology. Now, for the characteristic of futurism, they would use elements and inspirations from neo-impressionism and cubism to create compositions that would express idea of dynamism, the energy and movement of modern life. Okay, so futurism is the defiance of the art of the past and celebrating change, originality, and innovation in culture and society. Okay. So in this example of futuristic art, you have the Primavera Umbria, okay, which was created in 1923 by Gerardo Dottori in futurism style. Talking about Art Deco, okay, this is a kind of style under visual arts. Okay, uh, Art Deco, short for French arts, decoratives, and sometimes just called Deco. Okay, this is a style of visual arts usually used by architectures and product design, and this first appeared in France in the 1910, okay, which later on flourished in the United States and Europe in the 1920s and 1930s. Okay, now Art Deco differs from Art Nouveau. Okay, uh, for Art Deco, this is also one of those design styles that defies the passage of time. Okay, and for the characteristics, or rather for Art Deco, it is more focused on motion and thrill of the modern mechanized world, not only applied to visual arts but also to mass produced fashion and individually luxury crafted items. So Art Deco was influential all across fashion, advertising, and architecture. For its characteristics, it is playful, luxurious, and exotic. Okay. It is also an overturned traditional elegance in preference for a highly stylized and geometric style that symbolized wealth and sophistication. Okay, so here you have an example of an Art Deco, a self-portrait, Tamara in the Green Bugatti in 1929, painted by Tamara de Lempicka. Okay, now on abstract expressionism, this was popular during the 1940s. Okay, now for abstract expressionism, this is a post-World War II art movement in American painting developed in New York City in the 1940s. Okay, so it was the first specifically American movement to achieve international influence and put New York at the center of the Western art world, which was a role formerly filled by Paris. Okay. Now, it also tended to reject all recognizably realistic forms and used color and texture as the primary tool for expression. Okay. Now, for the characteristics of abstract expressionism, they would use free-flowing, gestural painted brush marks, producing paintings that were heavily reliant and, rather, heavily reliant on spontaneity and intuition. Okay, so here you have an abstract expression of painting entitled Multiform. in 1948 by Mark Rothko. Okay. Now, how did abstract expressionism affect art in the 1940s, moving towards 1950s? Okay. Well, abstract expressionism had a great impact for both American and European art scenes, okay, especially during the 1950s. And indeed, the movement marked a shift of the creative center of modern painting from Paris to New York City in the post-war uh, decades. Okay. Of course, abstract expressionism was deemed very important because it greatly stimulated the native New York City painters and gave them a more intimate view of the vanguard of European painting. Okay, so here, abstract expressionist movement itself is generally regarded as having begun with the paintings done by Jackson Pollock and Willem de Kooning in the late 1940s and early 1950s. Okay. Now, for contemporary art, okay, contemporary art started in 1946 and up to present. Okay, now this is a catch-all term for all art that has come after the Second World War. As such, it encompasses many themes and styles and takes us up to the present day. Okay, so in contemporary art, one can observe diversity and challenging nature because contemporary art offers work with a dynamic combination of materials. It also includes a dynamic combination of methods, concepts, and subjects that would challenge the traditional and defy easy definition. Okay, so for contemporary art, this is the art of today. Okay, and artists work in a globally influenced, culturally diverse, as well as technologically advancing world. So their art is a dynamic combination of materials, as we have mentioned earlier, methods, concepts, subjects, just to name a few. Okay, and it is also considered, or rather, it is considered as an art produced during our time, kasi up to present to eh. Okay, and modern art even refers to art produced between the 1860s moving onwards. Yeah, sometimes for modern art, it is also synonymously called as contemporary art, but they have different time periods and they exist in different planes. Okay. Now, for the characteristics of contemporary art, it is a style of decorating defined by simplicity, subtle sophistication, deliberate use of texture, and clean lines. It also tends to focus on color, space, and shape. Okay, now contemporary interiors as well as frames are sleek and fresh. Now this is a contemporary art, untitled number 153. Okay, now this is a color photograph made by an American visual artist, Cindy Sherman, in 1985, and in 2010, a print was auctioned for $2.7 million, making it one of the most expensive photographs that ever sold at that time. Now, moving towards Asian visual art, okay, let's look into what Asian art is all about. Okay. Now, Asian art includes a vast range of arts coming from various cultures, regions, and religions across the continent of Asia. Okay. Major regions of Asia include, say, Central East, South, Southeast Asia, as well as West Asia. Okay. Now, when it comes to Asian art, Okay? It is a vast and diverse field that spans thousands of years and many cultures. Okay? Now, the history of Asian art or Eastern art. Okay? We just discussed earlier about Western art. So now we would be talking about Eastern art or Asian art. It includes different influences from various cultures and religions. Now, the developments of Asian art historically parallel those in Western art. Okay? In general, a few centuries earlier, Chinese art, Indian art, Korean art, Japanese art, all of them each had a significant influence on Western art and vice versa. Near the Eastern art also had a significant influence of Western art, excluding prehistoric art or the art of Mesopotamia, which represents the oldest form of Asian art. Now, for the functions of Asian art, it primarily serves religious functions, okay? Buildings and decorating temples with the best vessels made of bronze, okay? Made out of bronze and gold, including their statues of gods and goddesses. Without arbitrary divisions separating the arts, East Asia has developed exceptionally complex artistic forms of possessing extraordinary richness as well as subtlety in practical and aesthetic applications. Okay. Now, for the influence of Eastern art, okay, you have a painting in the, or rather, a painting which is as old as civilization of China, and it is historically comparable to a Western painting. Okay. Eastern countries continued to influence each other's production of arts over the centuries, and the ideologies of Confucianism, Taoism, Buddhism, they all played important roles in East Asian art. Okay. On Buddhism art, this originated in the Indian subcontinent in the centuries following the life of the historical Gautama Buddha in the 6th to 5th century BCE, before evolving through its contact with other cultures and its diffusion through the rest of Asia and the world. That's why for Buddhist art, okay, we have Gautama Buddha, popularly known as the Buddha, okay, was the Shramana who lived in ancient India, and he is regarded as the founder of the world religion of Buddhism. A couple of centuries after his death, he came to be known by the title Buddha, which means awakened one or the enlightened one. Okay. In addition to Buddhist art, this is one of the images of the pensive Bodhisattva, okay, prevalent in East Asia between the 5th and 8th centuries. In Korea, that another type also emerged as an important Buddhist icon during the 6th and 7th centuries, particularly known in the kingdoms of Pekche and Silla. Now, this seated figure is among the best preserved examples of Buddhist art. Okay. Also included is the Great Stupa at Sanchi in India, which has been the focal point of the Buddhist faith in the region since it was built by Emperor Ashoka, okay, in the 3rd century BC. Talking about Bhutanese arts and crafts are known for their bold use of colors, okay, exquisite attention to detail and symmetry, portraying the deities, plants, and animals, and more art is to be used to decorate the homes and temples rather, and everyday objects of the Bhutanese people. Now, from the Buddhist monks making intricate sand mandalas to the woodworker carving a garish mask, art is seen as a religious uh, experience. Okay, it's seen as a religious experience leading to enlightenment. Now, in addition to Bhutanese art, it is also similar to Tibetan art. Okay, both are based upon the Vajrayana Buddhism and its pantheon of teachers as well as the divine beings. Okay. Now, Bhutanese art or the Thangka painting. Okay. Now, the Thangka painting is the making of a Thangka, which is a long and painstaking process. Okay, it starts with the preparation of the canvas, which must be well stretched and smoothened. The outline of the deity, the composition are all made according to set guidelines, first in pencil and then with a fine brush, and colors are later on painted in it. Okay, so this is an example of the Thangka painting, Thangka of Milarepa, during 1052 to 1135 in Thimphu. Okay, for Cambodian art, you have the traditional visual arts of Cambodia revealed the conservatism of the Khmer Empire. Okay, ancient themes were preferred, and rarely was there an effort to improve or adapt. Okay, the principal crafts were weaving, silver, goldsmith, and jewelry making. Visual arts also include wood and stone sculpture, painting, and architecture. Okay, so Cambodian art stretches back centuries to ancient times. Okay, but the most famous period of Cambodian art is the Khmer art, or rather during the Khmer Empire of 802 to 1431. Okay, now the stone carving, an example of Cambodia's artwork. Okay, Cambodia is best known for its stone carving. The stone carvings are adorned in temples of Angkor, which are renowned for the scale, richness, and the detail of their sculpture. And in modern times, art of stone carving became rare because of older sculptures that have survived or has been undamaged for centuries. That's why it eliminated the need for any replacements. Okay. Now the use of cement molds for modern temple architecture and by 1970s to 1980s, the craft of stone carving was nearly lost. Okay. Now, have here the Angkor Wat. This was originally built in the first half of the 12th century as a Hindu temple. Okay. Spread across more than 400 acres, Angkor Wat is said to be the largest religious monument in the world. And originally dedicated to the Hindu god Vishnu. Angkor Wat also became a Buddhist temple by the end of the 12th century. Okay, the stone carving that I mentioned earlier. Of course, Cambodia was best known for its stone carvings. Okay, all adorned in the Angkor Wat. For Chinese art, okay, Chinese art, you have some examples include the painting, calligraphy, architecture, pottery, sculpture, bronzes, jade carving, and other fine decorative forms produced in China over the centuries. Okay, so Chinese art is a visual art as well that originated in or is practiced in China. Okay, Greater China or by Chinese artists. Now, art created by Chinese residing outside of China could also be considered part of Chinese art. Okay, when it is based in or draws on Chinese culture, heritage, and history. Now, Chinese art was divided into different periods by the ruling dynasties of China and the changing technology. Different forms of art have been influenced by great philosophers, teachers, religious figures, and even political leaders. Chinese art encompasses fine arts, folk arts, and even performance arts. This is an example of a Chinese art painting. Okay, the vinegar tasters. Okay. This is a traditional subject in Chinese religious and philosophical painting. Because here you have the members of, or rather the founders of China's three major religions. Okay, and involving with it, or rather including with it, a philosophical tradition. Okay, so for the three major religion of China, you have Confucianism, Buddhism, and Taoism. Okay, for the three notable painters, okay, you have Wu Daozi during 680 to 759 CE. He was a famous painter in the Tang Dynasty and was honored as a painting saint. Wu lost his father at an early age and lived in poverty. Okay. Zuda, during 1629 to 1705 CE, he was a painter in the late Ming Dynasty and Qing Dynasty. Okay. He was the descendant of Zhu Yuanzhuang, the founder of Ming Dynasty. Zhao Menfu, during 1254 to 1322 CE, he was the descendant of Zhao Kuangyin, the founder of Song Dynasty, during 960 to 1279 AD. He was a versatile scholar, specializing in calligraphy and painting. Okay. Now, of course, Chinese art is also considered as a diverse and ancient tradition that spans thousands of years and many forms of expression. Okay. Now, for Indian art can be classified into specific periods. Now, each period reflects certain religious and political as well as cultural developments. The earliest examples are the petroglyphs, such as those found in Bimbetka, some of them dating before 5500 BCE. The production of such works were continued for several millenniums, and later examples included the carved pillars of Ellora, okay, Maharashtra State rather. Other examples are the frescoes of Ajanta and Ellora caves. Okay, so this one here, as you can see before you, is the Ellora caves in Maharashtra. This was built by Rashkuta King Krishna I, situated in the south of the precinct. Now, these caves were adorned with carves and statues, and they're estimated to have been built during the 600 to 730 CE. Okay. Now, Ellora is also known as Elura, and in ancient times as Elapura, okay, which is a sacred site in Maharashtra, central India. Now, Ellora Caves are listed by UNESCO as the World Heritage Site and is celebrated for its Hindu, Buddhist, and Jain temples and monuments which were carved from local cliff rocks. Now, on Indonesian art. Okay. Now, Indonesian art is quite difficult to define since the country is immensely diverse. Okay, just like the Philippines, which is archipelagic, Indonesia is also archipelagic. Okay, now, okay, now, being an archipelagic nation, it consists of 17,000 islands. Okay, now, for Indonesian art, it is visual, functional, okay, for some of its characteristic. And the floral design has been considered as part of the Indonesian culture. Okay, and arts a nod onto how, or a showcase on to how rich Indonesia is with natural resources. Okay, now Indonesian art are characterized by their delicacy and serenity of expression. Indonesian art enjoyed another golden age under the Majapahit Empire during 1293 to 1500, okay, during which a large number of Hindu Buddhist brick temples were built, characterized by tall, slender roofed red brick gates and a strong geometrical quality. Okay, so here you have the Demak Great Mosque in 1479. This is one of the most oldest mosques in Indonesia, located in the center town of Demak, Central Java, Indonesia. The mosque is believed to be built by the Wali Songo, with the most prominent figure Sunan Kalijaga, okay, during the first Demak Sultanate ruler, Raden Patah. Okay. Now, on Japanese art, okay, Japanese art covers a wide range of styles and media, including ancient pottery, sculpture, ink painting, and calligraphy on silk and paper. Ukiyo-e paintings and woodblock prints, ceramics, origami, just to name a few. Okay. Now, of course, Japanese art has frequently been complicated by the definitions and expectations established in the late 19th and 20th centuries, when Japan was opened to the West. Okay, the occasion of dramatically increased interaction with other cultures seemed to require a convenient summary of Japanese aesthetic principles. And Japanese art historians, as well as archaeologists, began to construct methodologies in order to categorize and assess a vast body of material ranging from ranging from Neolithic pottery to wood block prints. Okay. Now, Japanese art and architecture is works of arts produced in Japan from the beginning of human habitation. Well, there's started sometime during the 10th millennium BC to present. And Japanese art covers a wide range of art styles, including media, ancient pottery, sculptures, as I mentioned earlier, up to the times until from the ancient times up to the contemporary art of the 21st century. Now, this one is a unique type of pottery done in Japan. Prehistoric art of Japan begins with the Jomon period during 10,000 BCE to 350 BCE. The Jomon people were the first settlers of Japan, the nomadic hunter-gatherers who later practiced organized farming and built cities. Historians name the pots Jomon, which means cord markings. Okay, you could actually observe the cord markings, which was created in art form in the pottery. Okay, so here, impressions were made by pressing the rope into the clay before it was heated to approximately 600 to 900 degrees Celsius. All Jomon pots were made by hand. Without the aid of a wheel, the potter would just build the vessel from ground up. Okay, and as all other Neolithic cultures, women produced all these early potteries. Joman is said to be the world's oldest pottery to be discovered during 3000 to 2000 BC, the date of the pottery itself. Now, in Japanese, ukiyo-e translates to pictures of the floating world. Okay, this is a genre of Japanese art which flourished from the 17th and 19th centuries in the early Edo period. It started as a one-piece black ink, only using woodblock prints. The drawings were circulated in towns as a part of printing the books, or in canvas cloth, or spread among common people for their enjoyment. Color print then began in the mid-Edo period. Okay, so this is an example of ukiyo-e. The Hikoni scene may be the oldest surviving ukiyo-e work during that time. It dates back to 1624 to 1644. Okay, for the Laotian art, okay, Laotian art is from Laos. Okay, now or Lao art. It involves the myriad of forms created cultural expressions originating from Laos. Okay. It also, well, you could also observe ancient artifacts and recent productions. Laotian art also portrays Buddhist themes And it also includes materials in different forms like textiles, wood carving, and basket weaving. Okay, sculpture as well as architecture. Architecture. This example of Laotian art is a sculpture. The most famous Buddhist sculpture in Laos is perhaps the Prabang, also written as Prabang, and which literally means delicate Buddha. Now, this is a mystical national emblem of the Laos culture, and the statue is around approximately 83 centimeters in height. Okay, a standing Buddha with palms facing forward. Okay, so this structure is cast in bronze and covered in gold leaf. According to local lore, it was cast in Ceylon, now Sri Lanka, sometime between the 1st and 9th century. For Nepalese art, Nepali art is diverse and complex. Okay. Traditional art here includes intricate floral details and okay, intricate floral details, mythical beings, and the complex fusion of Hindu, Buddhist, and indigenous elements, using various materials like wood, stone, metal, and cloth. Okay. Now, of course, in addition to Nepalese art, okay, or let's just say Nepalese painting, it begins with the religious paintings with Hindu and Buddhist subjects, almost all Newa art by the Newari people of Kathmandu Valley. Okay, and yes, they're also considered as traditional painters. Okay, or traditional paintings of Nepal itself. Okay, now here you have the Messianic Bodhisattva. Okay, a Nepalese art sculpture Padmapani Lokeshvara, characterized by the Buddha of the future, which stands in a graciously exaggerated posture, and the body is beautifully counterbalanced. And yes, this was believed to have been made during the 11th to 12th century. On Thai art, okay, Thai art, which originated from Thailand, okay, this was traditionally and primarily Buddhist and royal art. Sculpture was almost exclusively of Buddha images. Okay. And painting was mostly confined to illustration of books and decoration of buildings, primarily palaces and temples. Thai Buddha images from different periods have a number of distinctive styles, and contemporary Thai art often combines traditional Thai elements with modern techniques. Okay. Now, in addition to that, uh, okay. In addition to that, talking about Thai art, yeah, paintings mostly consist of or could only be found in book illustrations. Okay, and sometimes when it comes to the subjects of the paintings, they were usually Ramakyan. Ramakyan, the Thai version of the Hindu epic Ramayana. Okay, and the Jataka stories or episodes from the life of the Buddha. Okay, the Buddhist heavens and hells, the scenes of daily life, the manuscripts of the Theravada Buddhists were in Pali, an Indian language, which could only be understood by the educated elite. So that's how their painting is being portrayed. Okay, and it also would include a moral lesson. Okay, now for Thai architecture, this one is known as the Temple of Dawn. Okay, Wat Arun Ratchwararam. which has been named after the Hindu god Aruna, okay, or the god of dawn. The recent construction for most parts was restored and rebuilt by King Rama II and King Rama IV of the Shakri dynasty of Thailand in 1656. Okay, on Tibetan art is first and foremost a form of sacred art. Okay, we are still under Asian visual art. Okay, talking about Tibetan art. Okay, now Tibetan art reflects the overriding influence of Tibetan Buddhism on these cultures. Tibetan art uniquely is an art that uses figuration and representational images to express abstraction. Okay, moreover, uh, though its use of mandalas art is an integral part of the spiritual practice and process. Okay. Now, here you have a painting, okay, an example portrayed under Tibetan art, the Gugi frescoes, mainly refer to the frescoes in the red and white palaces of the ruins of Guge Kingdom during the 900 to 1630 CE, which were a grand ancient city with unique Tibetan architectures. Now, the Guge frescoes covering various aspects of religious disciples and laymen, such as plow, sowing, harvest, hunting, and milking, have remained vividly colored following the passage of more than 300 years. Okay. This one is the aesthetic effect of Guge frescoes, okay, characterized with sublimity mixed with elegance. Okay, so here you could observe symmetry and harmony in the painting itself. There's also femininity with masculinity, melancholy with heroism, and sublimity with romanticism. Okay. Now, on Vietnamese art. Vietnamese artists began to use traditional mediums like silk, lacquer, and oil to create a European style artwork, and the result of which was a dazzling fusion of East and West, with talented artists creating breathtaking silk and oil paintings, usually depicting pagodas, okay, and the countryside, as well as the Vietnamese historical events. Okay, so on Vietnamese art, which is usually created in woodblock prints, okay, or dong ho. Okay, okay. In Vietnamese, it's called as Phang Dong Ho. This is a folk art originating in Dong Ho Village, Bac Ninh Province, Hanoi, that has been practiced for over 3 centuries. Dong Ho painting is also considered as one of Vietnam's cultural symbols, and the subjects depicted in these paintings were usually scenes of ordinary life, okay, Vietnamese landscapes, seasons of the year, and prosperity symbols could also be well observed in the woodblock prints or dong ho. Okay, the background paper in this woodblock, we're still under woodblock prints. In this print, okay, shown before you, the background paper in making a dong ho is originally white, okay, made of bark of a tree called jo, and the usual pigments were orange, pink, yellow, purple, refined from leaves of local trees. For red pigment, they were taken from the earth of hills and mountains. As for the black, this is made from burned bamboo leaves. Okay, the shiny white paint is made using ground seashells. For Mesopotamian art or the art of Mesopotamia, okay, this art has survived in the archaeological record from early hunter-gatherer societies, from 10th millennium BCE, moving on to the Bronze Age. Okay, the cultures of the Sumerian, Akkadian, Babylonian, and the Assyrian empires. These empires were later replaced by the Iron Age by the Neo-Assyrian and Neo-Babylonian empires. They're also widely considered to be the cradle of civilization. Okay, and of course, Mesopotamia brought about significant cultural developments, including oldest examples of writing. Okay, Now, let's look into additional information on Mesopotamian art. Okay? Because the cradle of civilization started in Mesopotamia. And as we have discussed regarding the importance of art, art also reflects the history of a nation or country, the history as well as you know it is also reflected in the culture of the people. Okay, now Mesopotamian art has survived, okay, in the record from early hunter-gatherer societies, as we have mentioned earlier. Okay, Mesopotamia is considered to be the cradle of civilization, and the art of Mesopotamia rivaled that of ancient Egypt as the most grand, most sophisticated, and most elaborate in Western Eurasia, starting from 4th millennium BC until the Persian Achaemenid Empire. Okay. Of course, the emphasis was more on its various, very durable form of sculpture in stone clay. Little painting has survived, but that what has suggests that, with some exceptions, painting is mainly used for geometrical and plant-based decorative schemes. Most of the sculptures were also painted. Okay. Cylinder seals have survived in large numbers, including complex and detailed scenes despite their small size. Okay. And yeah, some Mesopotamian art also survived in the form of cheap plaques of molded pottery for the home, some religious and some apparently not. For Mesopotamian art, their favorite subject would include deities alone or with worshippers. Okay, that was one of the important characteristic of Mesopotamian art. Deity alone or with worshippers, and animals in several types of scenes. They could be shown in repeated rows, singles, or they could be shown fighting each other, or a human confronted animals by themselves, or flanking a human or god. Sometimes it would also show God in the master of animals motif or the tree of life. Okay. Now, for pottery, the Warka vase is also called as the Uruk vase. Okay. This is carved alabaster stone vessel, and this is one of the earliest surviving works of narrative relief sculpture. It was found in the temple complex of the Sumerian goddess Inanna in the ruins of the ancient city of Uruk, okay, in southern Iraq. Now, the vase was discovered as a collection of fragments by German Assyriologists in their sixth excavation season at Uruk in 1933 to 1934. Okay, so this is the Warka vase, one of the earliest surviving works of narrative relief sculpture looted in the Iraq War. Okay, now on Islamic art. Okay, Islamic art directly reflects its cultural values, but it also shows the unique Muslim view of life and all its spiritual things. Okay. Now, for Muslims, God is the center, Allah. Therefore, Islamic art developed unique character of geometric, arabesque, and floral, okay, as well as calligraphic patterns which reflect on their aspects of balance. Now, in addition to Islamic art, okay, it encompasses the visual arts produced during the 7th century CE by people who lived within the territories inhabited or ruled by Muslim populations. Okay, referring to characteristics of traditions across wide range of lands, periods, and genres. So in Islamic art, the concept used first by the First, the concept used by Western art historians since the late 19th century. Okay. Now, for Islamic art, yeah, some say it was influenced by Roman art, early Christian art, particularly the Byzantine art, the Sasanian art, and later influenced by the central nomadic traditions. Chinese art could also be viewed from there. Okay, could also be observed from there because may significant influence on Chinese art with Muslim art. Okay, especially on Islamic painting, pottery, and textiles. Now, from its beginnings, Islamic art has been based on the written version of the Quran, okay, and other seminal religious works, which is reflected by the most important role of calligraphy, okay, representing the word as a medium of divine revelation. Okay. Kaya nga, as mentioned earlier, when you would observe or appreciate a Muslim art, you could mostly see calligraphic, geometric, and abstract as well as floral patterns. Okay. And yeah, it would also reflect on their aspects of balance. Now, for the Islamic wall art, this was influenced by the Greek, Roman, and early Christian and Byzantine art styles, as well as the Sasanian, mentioned earlier, of the pre Islamic Persia. Central Asian styles were brought in with various nomadic incursions, and Chinese influences had a formative effect on Islamic painting, wall art, pottery, and textiles. Okay, so here is an example of an Islamic wall art, a calligraphic panel by Mustafa Rakim, made during the late 18th and early 19th century. So, in tradition, Islamic art has focused on the depiction of patterns. You also have Arabic calligraphy, human figures, because it is feared by many Muslims that the depiction of the human form is idolatry. Okay, that's why you could never see any human form in the artwork. Okay, under Islamic art. Okay, yeah, and some also say that it also distracts the worshippers if they would see other things. Okay, that's why they made it into a geographic pattern, floral. Okay, with no well, there is there you could see forms and patterns there, but it moves away from any distraction that would be the cause for the worshippers to be distracted. Okay, that's why it was done according to um, how it was supposed to be. Now, of course, the panel here, okay, reads, "God, there is no God but He, the Lord of His prophet, Muhammad, and peace be upon him, and the Lord of all that has been created." Okay. Now, on Iranian art or Persian art, it is referred to as Iranian art. This is an art form made up of many mediums, okay, like metalworking, calligraphy, weaving, as well as architecture. Now, Persian art is developed into an art movement. It received a lot of multiple influences from neighboring countries. It also dictated the style seen in the artworks, with the earliest influence dating back to approximately 550 BCE. Okay. Now, Persian art, okay, exists as one of the richest art heritages in the world. Now, in ancient times, the surviving monuments of Persian art are notable for a tradition concentrating on human figure, mostly male and often royal. And sometimes animals could also be observed. But then Persian art continued to place larger emphasis on figures than Islamic art from other areas. Okay, that's why for religious reasons, now generally avoiding large examples specifically in sculpture. And generally, for Islamic style under Persian art, it has a style of dense decoration, geometrically laid out. Okay, now this kind of artwork developed in Persia into a supremely elegant and harmonious style. Okay, combining motifs from plants with Chinese motifs, such as a cloud band, and often animals that are represented at a much smaller scale, okay, with plants surrounding them. Okay. Now, this one is an example of a stone bas relief. Okay. Archer's frieze from Darius' palace at Susa, dating 510 BC. Okay. For the Nabatean art, okay. Nabatean art is the art of Nabateans of North Arabia. They are known for finely potted painted ceramics, which became dispersed among Greco-Roman world, and as well as contributions to sculpture and the Nabatean architecture. Okay, so this dates back from 312 BC, and for Nabatean art, this formed an independent kingdom rather for the Nabatean. Okay, they formed an independent kingdom with its capital at Petra in Jordan. So the art of the Nabateans of North Arabia are well known for potted ceramics, and of course, one significantly known artwork of the Nabateans is the archaeological sites in Petra. Okay, specifically monuments such as Al Khazne and Ad Deir. One of the most prominent rock-cut facades within the Petra Archaeological Park is the palace tomb, synthesized with the advanced set of scales and techniques that the Nabateans deployed to shape the unique monuments. Okay, this was built between the first and the second century AD. Okay, and this is also known as the most monumental of all royal tombs. Okay, as according to its name, royal tombs. Okay, Nabatean architecture in Petra. Okay. Now that ends our my presentation on that ends my presentation on Asian art, okay, as well as Eastern art. Okay. Now, according to Aristotle, the aim of art is to represent not the outward appearance of things, but their inward significance. Okay. Now, in order to appreciate art more in itself, you have to know its history and understand the culture behind it. Because if you have noticed, Eastern art has its deep influence with Asian art and vice versa. Okay, that's why even when it comes to our previous discussion on Western art, it also has its deep influences in Eastern art as well. Okay, so all of these ideas and how the art world has evolved and revolutionized itself are all linked together. Okay, especially if you would study the different histories and how people or countries influence each other. Okay, now that's about it for Eastern art and Asian art. I hope that we're able to get something from that. And moving forward, we would be talking about other topics for next meeting, like music and contemporary music. Okay, music in the different genres, so to speak. Okay, yeah, Western art and Asian arts. Okay, thank you so much for your time and enjoy the rest of the day. Bye, guys.